years. Really been a great transition, and so happy to also talk about that at some point. So I'm trying to do three things over the next several minutes or so. I really just want to talk a little bit about what's the rationale. Why am I talking to you about community engagement when we heard such fabulous science earlier today? I think equally there's a science to community engagement, and I want to really hopefully leave you with the impression when I go that that's equally as important as all the other basic science and population science that you've heard about. I want to talk about what is the evidence base. So again, this is a conference and this is a partnership that is based on science. So what do we know from the evidence about how community engagement is impactful as we're trying to address issues of cancer disparities? And then lastly, I want to talk about what we can do if you are a clinician, a physician, a researcher, scientist, just a living human being. What are some of the actionable steps that we might all need to take in order to reduce that rate of cancer that Dr. Wingfield talked about earlier? So fast forward then to January 12th of 2016, and then President Obama's State of the Union address. He announced at that point this idea of the national moonshot around cancer, in which the Vice President at the time, was going to lead that up. Later on in that year, actually put some substantial money towards addressing those issues. And I think from there, a lot of hope and energy went into the fact that we could reduce cancer as we know it. Journal of Medicine papers talking about community engagement as essential to addressing health inequities. And one of the reasons I think people are talking about it is that the National Cancer Institute has said, you got to. So that's, so no brainer. If they're saying, in order to get our funding, you got to do this, then of course, we're going to do it. Which is great, because I think mentioned before, this partnership and just in general, we talked about these academic community partnerships and these network grants have been, were started several years ago, a couple of decades ago. And the whole idea behind that was to make sure that you're engaging in partnership with communities that you're targeting. I'll highlight just a few of these, not go through all of them in detail. But another thing that's really critical is that partnership. We use that term very loosely, but if you're in partnership with someone, you are sharing your resources, you are sharing your decision making, you are sharing all the ups and the downs with this group or this entity. And we have to be careful about when we use that term as a partnership, when we're not really wanting to be partners. That's really critical, because the next time the next person comes in and you use that same term, they've already been burned, and so they're not likely to want to engage with you. So I just want to briefly tell you about a couple of the evidence-based models. So I mentioned, my time previously at the University of Alabama at Birmingham and the Cancer Center there. I kind of grew up with a network, a U54 grant that was part of that academic community partnership called Deep South Network for Cancer Control. So over about a span of 18 or so years, what this center did was establish a true partnership with communities across Alabama and Mississippi, and really started a program with community health advisors, individuals in the community who were already thought of as natural leaders and helpers, training them on cancer awareness and education and how to navigate people in for screening and care, and really using them as a conduit to deliver a number of interventions out there. Very successful. We used that same model and trained some of those advisors to be community health advisors as research partners, and sort of train them, got them IRB certified, provide more information and on protocols, and really over the course of that time, eliminated actually the disparities between Black and white women in getting mammograms. We also had weight loss programs, physical activity programs, all of these things that show clinically significant improvements through that time period. So prioritize community needs and assets is one of my main takeaways in terms of those of us who are in the academic space. These are a couple of papers that a group of us were part of a roundtable put out when NCI first, several years ago said you have to do community outreach engagement. And we really talked about the need to put communities first, not what you think is what's going on or the discovery you want to do. Really have that at the forefront and utilize them and value community members with further expertise. I think this one is, this cartoon is really reminiscent of a lot of my involvements in the community. So there's the guy sitting up on the high chair, you know, from the institution. He says, I have all this overhead and indirect. I just need your help with the community engagement. So again, that sort of surface level. And then the guy from the community is like, isn't that the whole purpose of the grant? You know, so, but really we know when we're having those conversations with our budget folks, you know, those are not there. So we need to clarify. You need to be upfront about funding. What is it that you're going to be allocating to the community members? I've had many conversations with the Office Sponsored Program at UAB about the insane expectation that some of our smaller community-based organizations can just bill us after they spent the money. No, they cannot. And so we have those conversations. Clarify what the roles are of each group of that partnership, who's going to do what. Talk about the mutual benefits of the collaboration. Co-create the materials together. Just don't value only the scientific expertise. The community expertise is equally as valuable in my opinion. And then discuss options for program evaluation and who owns that data. We need to have those conversations up front. I also think that it's important to prioritize equity. So you may have seen some kind of version of this cartoon before. And so equality, as we know here, is just everybody gets the same thing. But equity is giving people what they need to succeed. And communities, like individuals, might need different things. And so you've got to be creative in thinking about that. So even on the right side of that with equity, just giving an extra box for someone who's using a wheelchair is not going to be helpful. They couldn't get up there. So you have to think about a ramp. But I do some DEI training, and I have to just say, one of my colleagues who does use a wheelchair just puts the caution that it's not a safe ramp, so don't build a ramp like that. But you get the idea. You got to get people what they do. Another suggestion here is you got to focus on solutions. So I love this graphic. It talks about our barriers. But I just draw your attention to the solutions, the bottom half of that graphic. If we concentrate all the time on what's wrong or why we can't do anything, we're not going to get to eliminating those disparities. We're not going to get anywhere because we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And there are solutions to how we can get more representation in clinical trials. Another strategy I would encourage us all to do is, you know, don't wait too late. Don't worry only about the publication. We have to disseminate what's going on. So as was mentioned earlier today, part of the gaps that exist are not because we don't have the discoveries, like the early detection tools, is that we're not disseminating them to the populations that need it most. So even if we don't discover another thing, we've got fabulous tools. They're just not getting in the hands of the people in the communities that need it the most. So we need to do that. And then there's this thing. You know, we hear a lot about the lack of diversity and so forth, but we cannot tolerate the status quo. We can't tolerate just rooms of people that are like-minded, same demographics and so forth, talking about this as opposed to moving into action. And I think that, you know, these slides also tell the story. So this is again from that the AACR disparities report, with the idea of comparing those individuals who are actually getting STEM degrees, which are not reflective of the overall U.S. population. And then to the right, you also see those who are actually getting NIH-funded grants, grossly not representative of reflecting in terms of what the U.S. population is. We can't get to eliminating cancer disparities or reducing cancer mortality by 50% in 25 years if this remains the case, if that's status quo. So I've been thrilled to get to know many of the students and trainees as I've been here, and I'll just brag on a few of my own that I've really been excited about. And so I titled this Clearing the Pathway. So people talk about pipeline programs and pathways, but it's really important, I think, for those of us who've reached a certain level in our career to not just sort of talk about it, but to make a way for individuals to come behind us, to have succession planning, to really encourage them, to give them opportunities, to find opportunities, to be more of the sponsors, to individuals to put people's names on those short lists, even if they never know that you did that. And so here are some great, fabulous people that I've had the pleasure of providing mentorship. So whether or not it's Tiffany Carson, who would also graduated from UAB, and has gone on now to be a multiple R01 funded investigator. She recently took over as a co-leader of one of their population science research programs and doing a fabulous work. Another UAB graduate, Dr. Louis Thames, is at Northwestern, and they're doing fabulous work on cancer patient navigators in rural communities. Dr. Brandy Purnell is doing work in sickle cell disease and focusing on, what can we do there, particularly in adolescence and early childhood, and how those things are really impacting. Dr. Soumya Naranjan is still at UAB and doing things around, early detection of lung cancer and disparities in representation in clinical trials. And Dr. Michael Daniel is similarly looking at some of the ways that we can address the barriers for prostate cancer.